Hey, how's everybody doing? I pray that everybody is enjoying this Black History Month in spite of the cold weather in February. And I hope everybody's taking an opportunity to learn as much as you can. But as far as I am concerned, and many African Americans are concerned, Black History Month is year round, from January to December. But listen, I want to deal with the subject of a colorblind society. Have we reached it yet? No, we haven't. Have we made progress since 1619? Absolutely. Have we reached the time of what Dr. King hoped for, where we are judged by the content of our character instead of the color of our skin? We have not yet reached that time, but we are making progress. First thing I want to do is go in prayer. Father, again, I thank you for this platform, and I pray, Father, that some information will come out during this video that would be beneficial, informative, and thought-provoking. This I pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Listen, one of the first things I want to do, I want you all to listen to a video by Donald J. Trump, and then we're going to get into the discussion.
This week, I will also end the government policy of trying to socially engineer race and gender into every aspect of public.
Socially engineer. That's one of their talking points, socially engineer, because they don't want to deal with the fact that race still plays a role in hiring. Race still plays a role in whether minorities get into certain schools, whether it be Harvard, Yale, WashU, or whatever the case may be. So because laws were passed to try to level the playing field, it's social engineering, as far as Donald J. and many of the Republicans are concerned.
Public and private life. We will forge a society that is colorblind and merit-based.
Merit-based, colorblind and merit-based. Family, we have to be honest. There's never been a time, especially as far as African Americans concerned, where it was based on merit and colorblindness. See, what they don't want to admit is that many people in the dominant culture who are mediocre have been able to get into certain schools. They have been able to get certain jobs and good jobs. But now they want to talk about merit and the colorblind society because they don't want to admit the fact of the matter is we have not yet reached a playing field that is level. People are still being discriminated against because of their color, gender, and sexuality. But I want to deal with race today in this discussion. Okay, that video was pretty short. The next video I want to deal with it's called A Case for Color Blindness by Coleman Hughes, who I believe is a grifter, but he would tell you he isn't. But if you've listened to him, Coleman is a grifter, and he leans toward the right, even though he claims he's not a Republican. But see, I go by what you say. Words are powerful.
What trait makes them them? Now open your eyes. I don't know what each of you came up with, but I'm pretty sure I know what you didn't come up with. I'm pretty sure none of you thought, what makes Jim Jim is the fact that he's 6'2" and a redhead.
Okay, I want to start this video over. Let's start it over. He's doing a TED Talk. I want to start it. I want you to get the context of what he's talking about.
I want to do a quick exercise. Close your eyes. I want you to picture your best friend. Think about what specifically you love about them. What trait makes them them? Now open your eyes. I don't know what each of you came up with, but I'm pretty sure I know what you didn't come up with. I'm pretty sure none of you thought, what makes Jim Jim is the fact that he's 6'2" and a redhead. I'm guessing you chose their inner qualities, their sense of humor, their generosity, their intelligence, qualities they would have no matter what they looked like. There's one more quality I'm pretty sure you didn't choose. Their race.
Oh, Sherlock, that's obvious. Most people do not choose their friends based on race. They choose their friends based on commonality. What do they have in common? Their likes and dislikes. And in most cases, you choose your friend based upon where you live and where you go to school. And let's be clear, family. Most of my friends, in fact, you might as well say 99.9% of them are black. I had one friend who was white. He was Jewish. A guy by the name of Michael Feldman, who I happened to meet on a job some years ago. And during the course of us working together, we discovered that we had a lot of things in common. So as a result, we became friends. I didn't look at his race. Over a period of time, after talking with him and working with him, I discovered we had some things in common and we became friends. Okay? So of course, it has nothing to do with race. Now, why people would choose their friend based on race, I do not know. It should be based upon commonality, having things in common, etc.
Of all the things you could list about somebody, their race is just about the least interesting you could name. Right down there with height and hair color.
Listen, I know where he's going. This right-wing talking point, this narrative to try to get away from race. Race should be a big deal. It's time for us to just put it in the past and move forward and let people be judged on other qualities. And I wish that was the case. But folks, we have to be honest. We're still living in a world, especially in these United States, but people are still judged by the color of their skin.
Sure, race can be good source material for jokes at a comedy club, but in the real world, a person's race doesn't tell you whether they're kind or selfish, whether their beliefs are right or wrong.
I agree. It shouldn't. But for African Americans and in many ways Latino and other minorities, people are judged. People in the dominant culture attach certain qualities to minorities, and oftentimes they are negative. Okay? Now, I will also say that there's an assumption by many in the dominant culture that all blacks can play basketball and football, and that is not true. All of us are not gifted in athletics, but that is something they attach because of what they have seen on television.
Whether they'll become your best friend or your worst enemy. But over the past 10 years, our societies have become more and more fixated on racial identity.
See, the question is, why have they become fixated? Family, people have been fixated on race from the get-go. Since 1619, when Africans were brought to these United States on slave ships during the Middle Passage, there have been a fixation on race. We didn't ask for it. From day one, we wanted to be judged on our ability, not our race, not the color of our skin. But unfortunately, that has not been the case. And still today in 2025, the struggle is still going on where African Americans are still fighting to be treated fairly and impartial.
All been invited to reflect on our inner whiteness or inner blackness as if these racial essences define who we are.
Let's be clear. Our racial essence does not necessarily define who we are, but we are judged by that. Because oftentimes, when people in the dominant culture sees an African American, whether it be male or female, they don't know their pedigree. They don't know their background. But there is an assumption, it's usually a negative stereotype about them. They conclude based upon limited information that they have. Oftentimes, it's how they were raised, the culture, how they were formed in their families, the schools they went to. Because oftentimes, many white people do not go to integrated schools. And if they are African Americans in their school, it's very limited, it's a small amount. So guess what? Consequently, they don't have a good grasp or an idea about African Americans. Most of their views are formed from their family and what they've seen on the news and on television and the movies.
Meanwhile, American society has experienced the greatest crisis in race relations in a generation. Gallup has been asking Americans how they feel about race relations, and this chart is the result. So as you can see, between 2001 and 2013, most Americans felt good about race relations.
They did? I wonder who they interviewed. Family, I don't usually go by these polls. I've never been called, in most cases, about anything dealing with race. I wish they would, so I can give them my opinion. But we have to be honest, family. Race relations in these United States is still not good. Has it improved? Yes. But we are still polarized along racial lines. This past election was the best example. Most white people voted for Donald J. Most black people, believe it or not, still voted for Kamala Harris, even though there was an increase among African American men that voted for Donald J., which is ridiculous. That's another conversation. But race relations, if you are honest, if you pay attention to what's going on in society, it's not that good. And really, to be quite honest, it has not improved that much.
Then both lines take a nosedive. It's no exaggeration to call this one of the greatest crises of our time. And clearly, we need new ways of thinking about race if we're going to reverse this trend.
Family, we don't need no new ways. What we need to do is just have an open, honest conversation about race. And I'm reminded what one of my heroes, Malcolm X, said. Until black and white people are willing to have an honest conversation about race without fear of offending one another, race relations will not improve. That's part of the problem. And based on what I have observed, a lot of people in the dominant culture, especially those on the right, the MAGAs, they don't want to deal with race. When we bring it up, they claim victimhood. And then you know what they do? They call us woke. And most of them really don't even know what woke means. What they don't realize when they call us woke is actually a compliment. Because basically, when you're talking about somebody woke, they're socially conscious. They're socially aware of what's going on in their community. Okay?
So today I'm going to offer an old idea, but it's an idea that's been widely misunderstood. You've probably heard it before. It's called color blindness.
Here we go.
What do I mean by color blindness? After all, we all see race. We can't help it. And what's more, race can influence how we're treated and how we treat other people. So in that sense, nobody is truly colorblind.
We're not. Unless you are literally blind, when you see somebody, the first thing you notice is their color. That's the first thing. Now, depending on the interaction, you can actually get to know the person, whether on the job or at school. You get to know the person, and you may even come to a conclusion based upon what you have heard or what you have made to believe that your perceptions are inaccurate. But the first thing you see is the color.
But to interpret the word colorblind so literally is to misunderstand it. Colorblind is a word like warm-hearted. It uses a physical metaphor to capture an abstract idea. To call someone warm-hearted isn't to talk about the temperature of their heart, but about the kindness of their soul. And similarly, to advocate for colorblindness is not to pretend you don't notice race.
I disagree. Come on, family. We have to be honest. Warm-hearted? When most people on the right, we just have to deal with the elephant in the room. Talk about color blindness is usually over something that has happened in the media, some particular topic. They will come out and say, well, I don't look at race. I'm colorblind. I don't look at a person's color before coming to a conclusion. And that's not accurate. I wish it was. But family, we do not live in a colorblind society. If you read some of the stuff I read and see some of the stuff I've seen, whether it's in social media, whether it's on the television, the internet, very rarely do you see cases of color blindness. Because when there's a controversial case, for example, police dealing with a person who is black and a white police officer, ain't no color blindness going on. Because oftentimes those in the dominant culture conclude that the black person who was victimized by the police did something wrong. Oftentimes they come to a conclusion without even getting all of the facts. But yet they claim to be colorblind. Now what puzzles me is that many of them struggle with having an honest conversation about race. And I believe much of it is racial guilt. Instead of just being honest about it and say, I need help. That's something I need to work on, because in my family, this is what I was taught. This is what I was made to believe about African Americans. But I realized that I was wrong, and I want to get better. Because after doing a little thinking, I realized that everybody's not the same. Black people are not a monolith. Neither are white people, Asian, etc. All of us are individuals. And then a lot of times they say, well, I look at individuality. No, they don't. Now, when it's somebody on the conservative side, somebody who's a grifter, like Byron Donaldson, Tim Scott, oh, individuals. But if it's somebody they disagree with, it's a whole. It's not individualism. And let me just say this before I get off of here. Family, I'm hoping one day that we live in a colorblind society. But we have to be honest. Racism is entrenched in these United States. Systemic and structural. And people are still conditioning their children not to be colorblind. One of the most interesting and beautiful things, if you've ever seen it, if you've ever seen black children and white children play together. Now they colorblind because they have not yet been indoctrinated, especially the white child, about black people. They will play together like there's no tomorrow because both of them understand that they're playing with another child. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. I remember my youngest daughter, she went to a private Lutheran school, and one of her friends happened to be white. And they developed a friendship over the years. And I remember one day, we were at Six Flags, and my daughter had ran into her. She hadn't seen her in a few years. And Lord have mercy, they embraced. And they were still young, and it was a beautiful sight to see. because her white friend had not yet been indoctrinated about racism. She looked at my daughter just as someone that she liked, and I believe on some level she may have even loved her. See, if we can maintain that from childhood to adulthood, then maybe we can have a colorblind society. But unfortunately, it's not happening. And let me say this. Oftentimes when people in the dominant culture see black men, depending on where they at, let's just say at ATM machine and it's late. Trust me, they're not colorblind. When a white woman who is on the elevator sees a black male get on that elevator, trust me, they see color. When they see black men on the street at night, trust me, they see color. And I understand why. Because of the negative images of black men on the news, in the movies, television, it's usually negative. So that gets deep into their subconscious. So that fear is instilled in them, that all black men are dangerous, subject to commit violence, and are criminals. And that's not true. But see, we don't want to have that conversation. And even when many African Americans are able to get good jobs, it's an assumption that they got there because of affirmative action and DEI. Color blindness don't enter in then. They don't say, I believe Leroy Jackson, he got that job as a CEO because of his pedigree. He was qualified. It was because of affirmative action DEI. But yet, the right, Coleman wants to talk about this colorblind society. Family, there are all kind of issues. There's all kind of examples that can confirm that we have not yet reached it. And the fact that Donald J. is removing DEI, that's one of the best examples. Wants to give the illusion that we're going to remove it so we can have a colorblind society, that everybody will get jobs, etc., based on merit and their ability. That's a lie from the pit. Family, we have to be honest. We have not yet reached a colorblind society. And I'm well aware as an African-American male, even though I'm an older African-American male, I know that people still see me. Even though I do not fit any of the stereotypes, I know they still see a black man who happens to be older. And even though I don't get profiled while I'm driving like some of my younger brothers, the police still see me. Now, he may not be concerned about me as he are the younger black men, but he still sees me as a black male. Now, there is still suspicion. Now, he may not act on a suspicion because he probably feels like I'm less of a risk. But that does not mean, depending on where I'm at time of day, that I won't get pulled over. Because depending on where you're driving, what time of day, the police see your color. And when you go to the mall, trust me when I tell you, the store clerks see your color. Let me say this also before I get off of here. I was reminded of a story dealing with Oprah. She said, I don't remember all the details, but I do remember that she was treated unfairly because the white woman who was waiting on her, she didn't even know who she was. But she made a conclusion based upon her color that she had no right to be there and she could not afford to be in that store. She saw her color. And family, I have grandchildren, and they are beautiful. I have 3 granddaughters and a grandson, and they are wonderful. far as I'm concerned. And if you ever saw them and met them, I think you would agree they're wonderful. And I want them to live in a country where people don't see their color. But let me say this. God made us all. And this is something I should have said in the beginning. We were all made in the image and likeness of God. He don't make no jump. In fact, the Bible says we were fearfully and wonderfully made. I just wish we can get to a point in this country where people can get past that and realize that that person who happens to be black was made in the image of God. And they are wonderful. They are gifted. And they have a lot to contribute to society. But oftentimes we don't get a chance because there's an assumption. Oftentimes, especially for black men, our mere presence brings suspicion. Oftentimes we don't get the benefit of the doubt. I must admit that bothers me. And I'm going to mention one more thing. I read this book by a brilliant brother. I cannot think of his name, but the book is called Presumption of Guilt. And in the book, he detailed how black academics, doctors, lawyers, CEOs were profiled by the police. They did not see the Harvard and Yale, Princeton pedigree. You know what they saw? They saw this. They did not get the benefit of the doubt. Now, I wish they would have. In one particular case, this brother, I forget what his credential was, but they were coming from a funeral from out of town. The police pulled them over, had them get out of the car in pouring down rain, and tore the car up looking for drugs. And when they realized that they didn't have any drugs, no apology, left them there. But we want to talk about a colorblind society. We have not yet reached it. I'm hoping one day that we can. But you know what? It starts with a conversation. We have to be honest. We have to put everything on the table and speak of how we actually feel and try to come up with solutions. And we have to teach our children to not judge anybody by the color of their skin, about what they heard. Because oftentimes, you don't know nothing about that person until you actually spend some time with them. Okay? But listen, I'm going to go ahead and end it. But listen, if you could, please subscribe to the channel. Please share the video and hit that like bell. And I'm going to go ahead and end with prayer. Father, again, I thank you for this platform, and I pray that the information that was discussed is beneficial to everyone that has an opportunity to see it. This I pray in Jesus' name. In the meantime, stay up and stay informed. God bless you.